Marxist theory asserts that history is shaped by class struggle and the ever-changing means of production, which result in changing societies and changing norms and values. Marxist thought begins with historical materialism, the theory that material conditions of society, primarily the mode of production, determine its social structure, political systems, and even culture. According to Marx, history is shaped by material forces and economic relationships rather than ideas, religions, or moral beliefs. These economic factors determine the structure and organization of society, and as they change, they lead to shifts in the overall social and political order. The forces of production are crucial to historical materialism and Marxist theory. They refer to the tools, technologies, labor, and raw materials that are used to produce goods and services in a society, representing the productive capacity of said society. The forces of production are crucial because they determine the ability of a society to generate wealth. As the forces develop over time, they can change the way goods and services are produced, leading to a transformation of society's economic structure, the relation of productions, and social order. Forces of production connect to the mode of production as they explain the way in which society organizes the production of goods and services. It includes two key elements, force of production and relations of production. The mode of production drives social change. Marx argued that this is the foundation upon which society is built. Historical materialism explains that societies evolve through stages driven by the development of their mode of production. Changes in the way goods are produced, for example, feudalism to capitalism, lead to changes in the social structure. The forces of production and the relations of production work together to shape historical development. The mode of production gives way to the economic base. This is the foundational economic structure of a society. The materials used to produce goods and the social relationships people enter during this process determine how power, wealth, and resources are distributed in society. Together, the forces and relations of production make up the base which make up society's economic foundation. The superstructure arises from and is shaped by the economic base. It refers to the social, political, and ideological institutions and structures that aren't directly related to the economy but are deeply connected to it. The superstructure consists of political institutions, ideology, and social institutions, and according to Marx, exists to reflect, justify, and reinforce the economic base. In other words, the dominant economic structure of society shapes the institutions that governs people's lives. For example, in a feudal society, the superstructure would include the monarchy, the church, the aristocrat, and the system of laws that justify feudal relations. We cannot properly discuss Marxist thought without considering relations of production. This refers to the social relationships that people enter as they produce goods and services. These relationships are based on who owns the means of production, for example, lands and factories, and how people organize their labor. Marx identified different stages of history based on the dominant relations of production, such as feudalism or capitalism. Historical materialism connects the relations of production because the mode of production shapes the relations of production. As the forces of production evolve, they change the social and economic relationships in society, as well as the base and superstructure. Within the relations of production are two important relationships, the bourgeoisie and the proletariats. The bourgeoisie refers to the social class that owns and controls the means of production, such as lands and factories. They own the productive assets and control the distribution of goods and services. Their primary source of wealth comes from the ownership and the investment of capital. By employing the proletariat, they extract profit in the form of surplus value, the difference between what workers are paid and what the value is and what they produce. The profits are generated by exploiting the proletariat's labor. Marx argued that the capitalist system was inherently exploitative because the bourgeoisie profits from those who do not have the chance. In other words, they do not own and cannot generate high amounts of capital. Proletariat refers to the working class in Marxist theory. Specifically, it is a class of people who do not own the means of production. They must sell their labor in exchange for wages in order to survive. The proletariat's primary asset is their ability to work and sell their labor to the bourgeoisie class. The proletariat does not own productive resources and is exploited because the value they create through labor is greater than the wages they receive. The proletariat is central to Marx's theory of class struggle. Marx argued that the tension between the workers and owners would lead to a conflict, eventually resulting in a revolution that would overthrow the means of production and thus end capitalism. The dynamic of these relationships gives way to commodity fetishism, alienation, surplus value, and exploitation. Surplus value refers to the difference between the value produced by labor and the wages paid to the worker for that labor. Put simply, it is the value that workers create through their labor and is above what they are compensated for. According to Marx, the value of a product is determined by the amount of socially necessary labor time required to produce it. Marx used this concept to explain the exploitative nature of capitalism, arguing that the bourgeoisie extracts surplus value by paying workers less in order to maximize their profits. Related to surplus value is commodity fetishism. This refers to the way in which commodities are given a form of mystique and social power that detaches them from the social relationships and labor that produce them. Commodities are no longer seen as a result of human labor, but having an intrinsic value of their own. Commodity fetishism is closely related to Marx's concept of alienation, in which workers are alienated from the products of their labor because they do not own the goods they produce. Instead, the commodities take on a life of their own that distances and alienates the worker. The previous concepts explain exploitation and refer to the way that the working class is oppressed by the owning class. Alienation is closely connected to exploitation, and it explains how workers experience a sense of disconnection and powerlessness about their work and life. Due to surplus value and commodity fetishism, workers have no connection to the final product of their labor, making them feel alienated from the outcome of their work. They are simply a clog in the machine, performing tasks without a sense of purpose or fulfillment. For Marx, exploitation leads to alienation because workers are treated as commodities themselves, estranged from their labor production and other workers. Alienation leads to class struggle and thus class consciousness. This is the awareness that members of a social class have regarding their shared interests, especially in relation to the exploitation they face within the capitalist system. The proletariat would need to develop an understanding of their position in society and recognize the exploitative nature of the bourgeoisie. Once the working class becomes aware of this, its common struggle and potential power, they will unite and act collectively. When this happens, they understand that capitalism does not work in their favor and begin to see the possibility of changing the system. Class consciousness thus becomes the catalyst for revolution, and that revolution leads to a temporary phase where the working class controls the state but ultimately aims to create a classless society where exploitation is abolished. After the revolution, we end up with communism. For Marx, this is the final stage of historical societal development, characterized by a classless, stateless society where the means of production are collectively owned and controlled by the people. In communism, there is no private property or exploitation, and the resources are distributed according to the needs of people rather than profit. In summary, communism is a society where exploitation, inequality, and alienation are eliminated, and people live in harmony, working together to meet their collective needs. It is the realization of true freedom, where material wealth is shared and collective success is the norm. This has been the concept map of Marxist thought and the process of communist emergence. Thank you for watching.